Cheers. Thank you very much, Ben. I mean, this time last year, I was sat in Glasgow at the previous host city conference, discussing women's sport events and the great opportunity around women's sport events because they had such a clear social and health benefit across all women's sport events, really. And after the events of 2020 so far, we're now kind of talking about all sporting events having to consider what their purpose is, what's their reason for being, what unique selling point can they offer, and how can they ensure that they're benefiting communities as well as generating revenue. So to discuss this and maybe more, we'll see how we get on. I'm going to be joined by Jakob Larsen, Director of Competition and Events at World Athletics, Aoife Delmas, Director of Business Development at the European Society of Cardiology, Robbie Clyde, Head of EventScotland at VisitScotland, and Sven Stimac, Chief Operating Officer of the Floriade Expo 2022, which is an AIPH-approved international horticultural expo. Please, everyone, be aware, if you want to ask questions, you can throw them in the chat box. We'll try and get to those when we can. And I believe there's also a poll going on alongside this session. You can vote in the poll and we'll hopefully reveal the results of that poll at the end of the session. To get underway, I mean, we might as well just ask the big question that's in the name of the event. It feels more vital than it ever has before for any major event, whether sporting or otherwise, to have a raison d'etre to really communicate its purpose and how it as an event can help the industry and the public at large. Robbie, I thought I'd come to you first as someone who is involved in events across the spectrum and in helping communicate that purpose. How can events do that, and how important is it now that they do so and communicate that real raison d'etre?
Yeah, Adam, thanks very much. Look, if I may, I'd just maybe like to start by saying I'm sure I speak for many people here and the panel people who are part of this session to say that we're all saddened to hear the untimely passing of your colleague at Sport Business, founding editor, Kevin Roberts. Obviously, Kevin was a really well-respected figure across the whole of the industry and the sport and events sector. And, we'd obviously like to pass on our condolences and best wishes to you, your colleagues, and of course, Kevin's family. So 2020, of course, has been a challenging year for all of us. And I think it's really forced us across all work that we do to take a step back and really think about why we do what we do. I'm a big fan, many of you will know, Simon Sinek's Power of Why. And for those that don't know, it's really three concentric circles with why at the center, the purpose, why we do things. Sitting outside that is the how we make things happen, and finally outside the what, which is the end result. And I think in events we're perhaps too drawn to the what the end result is, what this event is that we're doing, and obviously as well as events professionals, we're so focused on the how. We love a plan, we love a project plan, a transport plan, a marketing plan, and so we really focus on the how we do things. But do we spend enough time really genuinely thinking about why? Do we think about why we, as a host, and obviously as Ben said is in the introduction, I guess I'm representing the host cities, host regions, host countries. Do we think enough about the why we're hosting events rather than what the end result is? And I think that going forward, both sides of the spectrum, the events organizer, the rights holder, and the host cities and the regions need to be aligning much more closely and focusing on what that, as you say, what the raison d'etre of the event, not just the event itself, but how it aligns with the drivers and the levers of host cities and regions. And when those two raison d'etres, when those two whys are closely aligned, that's when we see successful events. And I think that with the, as I said at the beginning, the pressures of the last year, and I think the pressures that we're going to see, particularly those host cities, regions and countries where we are looking to bring events and through the support of our governments and government funding. And I think the pressures inevitably that there will be in light of the pandemic over the last year, I think we're going to see even more tighter focus on aligning those whys. So yeah, absolutely. I think, as I said before, where we get that close alignment between event organizer and host cities and then event delivery, and of course the public and the people that are there to watch and see and spectate and participate in those events, that's when we see the greatest success.
Thanks, Robbie. Interestingly, I'd probably want to ask Jakob this next question anyway, because it ties really well into that. Jakob, I know you're involved in the organisation of the event in Aarhus in Denmark last year, where you kind of integrated cross-country championships into the actual fabric of the city, and you ran around the city itself, which was a really good example of how an event integrates itself into an environment and into a community and into a city. So could you explain some of the thinking behind that and how that helped you to really kind of push the idea of the event having a purpose and helping the community as well as helping World Athletics?
Yes, for sure. Thank you. So the World Cross Country in Aarhus took place it's a smaller Danish city, and the course was laid out on passing over the rooftop of a museum. Now, cross country is a major sport in a few countries, but in most countries doesn't really ring a bell, and that goes for Denmark as well. So we figured out that no one would really understand the sport. They wouldn't have a keen knowledge of the stars who would attend. So the basic thinking was, let's make the event the star. Let's make this an experience. And I think this is where the event world is headed as a whole. You could argue that in many ways an event is basically just an engine, like in a car, right? Whereas, and it's like car shopping. You would never really focus too much on the engine anymore. You're basically focusing on what the car as a whole provides you with. And that was the thinking of this event. We need to build an experience. We need to answer the key question, which is key for all of us. Why should people care? If this event did not take place, would it be missed? If we skipped an edition, would anyone notice? And that's just key for all of us to design an experience that make people say, this was worth the investment. And in basically an event is it's a consumer. It's a consumer of time, of money, of resources. So what are we providing in return? That's basically it. And it's an experience, I would argue, that it's no longer about the engine. It's about the experience of the car as a whole. Forgive me my metaphor.
No, thanks. And Sven, similar question to you, really. How for the Floriade Expo 2022, how are you attempting to provide and communicate that purpose that the event has, and make sure that it integrates itself into the city in which it's being held, rather than just kind of just being there and it happening?
Yeah, actually that's the most interesting question. How to make this event understandable for our owner, the city of Almere, for the citizens of Almere, because it's a quite complex project. It's quite an investment, and we are continuously working in this preparation and making of phase of 6 years on it. And with preview centers, we are communicating. We have open days every month, guided tours to understand it. But there are always discussions for sure on it. Pro and cons discussed on political ways in the citizens, in the media, but we have to work against it. And most likely, and I'm doing this since Hanover World Expo, that the cities and the citizens understand the purpose and the power of the event at the end of the event. And if we see the objectives and the opportunities, you were asking because besides the infrastructure development, what are we doing with this event? This event takes place here in Almere for a period of about 6 years. That's a whole preparation and making of time period plus the 6 months event. And but the objectives are much further than just the infrastructure. If you see this here, Almere, a new town, like our sister city in Milton Keynes, almost the same age, we are primarily working on the image. We have challenges on educational level. We have challenges on internationalization, the development of the economy, tourism. All these aspects are besides the infrastructure. And then we have the challenge to explain the economic value. What's Jakob just mentioned it. What's the economic value of the event? And like a typical event like ours with 2 million visitors, there are many studies in Germany. We have there are many horticulture expos, sometimes 4 or 5 per year. And in this category, we're working with 2 million visitors. Always, it's in the average 300 million euros economic value at the end of the event. So, but explaining it and understanding it, that's an investment in the development of the city. This is very complicated. And just at the end of the event, you understand it. And it's, for me, it's I never forget it from Hanover. It was very tricky discussion in the period, in the making of. Almost no one of our team came from Hanover city. I'm actually from Hamburg, very close to Denmark. But at the end, the citizens, they were asking us never stop with the event. So, and then they understood, that they understood the event. In Venlo, 2012 with Floriade, we had the same situation. And then we had a critical discussion about the financing. And now, 4 years later, we have the economic analysis on it, and then it's positive. So it remains tricky because it's a very complex and huge event. And it doesn't matter whether it's a sports event, Olympics, London, the development is, I think, the best example we can have. Or we see in Hamburg, the Philharmonie, something completely different. The investment, instead of 70 million, 300 or 50 million euros. But after 2 years after the opening, there was already the return of investment. So it doesn't matter what kind of event it is, if we go for it, and we have to trust on ourselves that it will be positive, and then it will end up positive.
Great, thanks, Sven. And Aoife, I'd like to come to you now. Sorry, I always hate it when you're the last person out of a 4-group panel to question. I didn't mean to leave you till the end. But obviously, sport events have always had this kind of public health aspect to them. They've always had this requirement of communicating a public health benefit as well as a revenue one and whatever else they bring with them. Has that been accelerated by the current pandemic? Has the events of 2020 really changed the priorities of events? Are they going to now have to place even more focus on public health? And is that going to become one of the main issues that we're discussing around major events, sporting or otherwise?
So yeah, thank you very much. There always needs to be a last speaker, so don't worry, I don't take it. It's very interesting to hear the other panelists. So maybe in terms of context, I work for the European Society of Cardiology, so we organise conferences, so medical conferences. One of them is a 30,000 person event every year where we bring cardiologists together to discuss their career, their profession, etc., and obviously what that means for the impact on patients and potential patients, of which we all could be one in today or in the future. And it's very interesting to hear the other panelists, because I think what I'm really picking up, and I think that what the last 9 months have shown us as well, is the aspect of the power of events. And even as Congress and event organisers, perhaps we didn't fully understand that aspect of the power of events, not just the purpose of events, but the power. We didn't potentially unleash that. It reaches back to what Robbie was saying in terms of we have a tendency to reach for our how, those plans, those deliverables in many aspects. We should have brought 30,000 people together, cardiologists together in a city this year. Was that missed? It was definitely missed, and has been missed, and continues to be missed from a cardiology professional point of view in terms of advancing science. But has that been missed from a public point of view? No, I don't think so. And I think that's something that we really need to own as a group moving forward with event partners, with host cities, etc. We have a strong message. If you look at the message of the European Society of Cardiology, it's about strong and healthy hearts. That's a real strong public message. And we have strived over the years and had difficulty over the years of really, using and unleashing the potential of that in a particular community or a particular city. It has been very much an afterthought. We've looked at more of how we're going to use the event, how are we going to fill rooms, how are we going to serve coffees, etc., etc. And we haven't really looked and done in the planning stages of what this will actually mean from a public perspective. Digital has enabled us, I think, to look at the opportunity, obviously, with dissemination, but it has real limitations. And one of our driving and our learning points moving forward will be to work with host cities and policymakers in terms of involving the aspect of public health and public deliverables. So there has been real gaps in the future. This crisis has allowed us to underline those gaps. And I think, part of our potential and our raison d'etre moving forward will be to be able to work on these components that were gaps in the past.
And do you feel that there is a need or a struggle to communicate the purpose of the event to the general public, Aoife?
I suppose it depends on the event. As I said, I think we have a very clear, we're lucky because we have a very clear message, but still we had difficulty. If you look at the message of the ESC of all of our events, it comes back to the fact that there are multiple different factors that you can go and that we can help the public raise awareness of heart disease and stroke, etc. That's something that everybody lives with on a day-to-day basis. We don't think about it on a day-to-day basis. But we have a unit, and we represent 100,000 cardiology professionals across 57 countries, and it's their job every day. So the fact that those professionals can come to a particular city and to a particular country and put a focus on that and actually give tangible deliveries in and around that should be a very, very simple message. But as I said, when we went about our events and bringing our cardiology professionals together, we didn't really focus on the potential of that message. Unfortunately, but that's something, and I don't think it's also, I think in terms of the cities, there were some cities that we managed to work with very well. We usually start our planning for any of our large events. I think, like many of our colleagues here, we start 4 to 5 years before an event. But generally, when we start looking at the public aspect and involving communities, etc., we look at this 6 to 12 months out. That's way too late, and it's generally seen as an ad hoc approach. At least I'm talking from our perspective, and that's it's insufficient, and it's something that we definitely need to be improving on. It comes back to this aspect of the why. Would people miss the ESC Congress or your event in a particular city? In terms of the legacy that you're leaving, I think the resounding answer for 2020 is no in terms of a public and perception point of view, but yes from a professional point of view. The doctors are missing seeing each other, so at least that's a good starting point.
And that leads me nicely onto something I just wanted to pick up on, something that Sven mentioned, and put the question to you, Jakob, because he said that the Floriade is in where it is for a 6-year period. It's not just about the event; it's about the build up to it, and clearly with World Athletics, that's the same. Looking at something like Eugene next year, you will have now been working in Eugene for probably a 4 or 5 year period. So how important is it that you communicate the purpose of the event throughout that 5 year period, throughout the and you make sure that you're having a benefit on the community for the entire period that you're in a city, not just in the year that you're holding it or for the 2 weeks that the event runs for?
Well, it's extremely important for a number of reasons. One of them is that World Athletics, we have 25 days of events every 2 years, which means that we would have 705 days with no events going on, right? So it goes without saying that it makes total sense to use the 25 days to drive the remaining 705 days. Now, that's part of it. Some of these events, they're over so quickly that they did not even begin before they're done, basically. So you want to build up momentum. You want to make sure that people are looking forward to this event. And this is not done through press releases only. This is done by having people on the ground communicating why this is worth your while. For Oregon specifically, it's also about positioning the event as in a storytelling that makes sense, that this is an event that travels around the world. And we want the event to be at its very best in Oregon. But we also want Oregon to be at its very best. And Oregon will come, Eugene will be between the Olympic Games in Tokyo and the World Championships the following year in Budapest. So if you make a straight line from Tokyo to Budapest, how do you position Eugene in the best way possible to make it appear like this was the best ever? And this means that this is a joint effort where you basically work together hand in hand. There's not really a buyer and a seller in this. It's a joint venture with aligned interest that we're there to create a party that no one wants to miss. And this is not done on event day. This is done in years leading into the event, building the narrative, making sure that people understand this is definitely worth your while.
And Robbie, I wanted to then follow up with you to get the kind of, the event host perspective on this. And I wonder whether, from your perspective, thinking back to even a year ago, what were the main priorities that you were discussing with rights holders at that point in time with regards to public benefit and the purpose of events in Scotland in 2019, as opposed to how you will be now communicating with those same people a year on?
Yeah, I think inevitably things have not necessarily changed, but I think that priority list or the way in which we assess and determine which events are a good fit for Scotland have definitely changed. As you said at the beginning, Adam, a year ago at this conference, we were talking about the great strides that are being made. A lot of work still to be done, but in terms of women's sporting events, and in Scotland last year we focused on a number of major women's sporting events, culminating with the Solheim Cup, which was a great success for us. But equally, if you'd asked me this time last year what I thought our focus would be on, one of our biggest drivers would be sustainability, and obviously that hasn't changed, but we talked a little bit about the impact of COVID on health and well-being. And I think that there's a huge driver now towards looking at how events can be a driver to improve the health and well-being, and not just health, but mental health of our people in our communities. And I think that is something that we will be looking more and more at for the future. And of course, it goes without saying, racial equality, the rise and the importance of Black Lives Matter has been so prominent over the course of the last 12 months. Again, how we work with events to ensure that we are supporting events and promoting and supporting our diverse range of communities, obviously in host countries and cities, but also the athletes for those sporting events, or artists for cultural and arts festivals that are part of those. So those, I would say, are the real priorities for us going forward. It changes. Economic impact, as Sven has said, will always be important. The media value of those events will be important. But if I guess I have one criticism of rights holders, and perhaps not the mega events, but the next tier down on the level, is that when they're coming to promote themselves and to look for expressions of interest from host cities and regions, they're still very, very much focusing on economic impact and media value. And those are things, it's like going to a job interview. If somebody comes to us now just with those and thinks that those are key drivers, it means they don't understand us and they don't understand what we're looking for in Scotland. If I can just also maybe come back to Aoife's point, I think really, really important, and one of my colleagues in our team here in Visit Scotland is focused on our approach to supporting business events, and obviously the types of conferences and congresses that Aoife mentions, cardiology or energy or pharmaceutical. We have focused again in Scotland over recent years to try and make sure that we are aligning, and we're trying to attract businesses and conferences and congresses that align with the policy priorities here in Scotland. So, as Aoife said, there will be. I'm not an expert, but as an important university country with Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, Aberdeen, St Andrews University, Strathclyde, etc. I have no doubt there will be researchers, PhD programs, and of course healthcare companies that are here in Scotland that are working on and developing in the field of cardiology, for example. And that's where we would look in the future. We would want to have those types of discussions, as Aoife says, 2 or 3 years out, to make sure that we are helping to deliver a successful Congress for you, but also how does that help, bluntly, how does that help Scotland, and how does that help our research scientists, our universities, and our companies to get a foot in the door and promote what they're doing here in Scotland. And another, I guess, good example of that would be COP26 taking place in Glasgow next year. It was due to be taking place, or would have taken place, just last month. But the United Nations Climate Change Conference, it is clearly one of the most significant comings together of people and leaders from across the world. And Scotland has, for the last 10, 15 years at least, really prided itself on our focus to become a world leader in the development of renewable energy. So when the world's eyes are on Glasgow next year, we will be using that opportunity to again demonstrate that for a relatively small country, we have some of the best development in renewable energy anywhere in the world. So it comes back to why, and it comes back to alignment of priorities. And I think more and more as countries, as regions, as cities, as I said before, we need to be really, really clear that we have that alignment between event and country city.
Mm-hmm. So Aoife, I'll come back to you there then, because that seems like a good opportunity to ask how you, as the European Society of Cardiology, how do you kind of ensure that when you're talking to a potential host for the event, that you promote the event and you kind of make sure that it's integrated into that community beyond just the immediate kind of, I don't know how long the event goes on for, but the week, say, of the event, and you make sure that it has that lasting impact and integrates itself within the community?
Yeah, I think that it's very interesting to hear Robbie. I think that this will be, we obviously have criteria when we're reaching out to events in terms of looking at, capacity, deliverables, hosting of the city, and generally we would be working with the Congress Centre, with the tourism boards as a general overall view. But in the last number of years, the ESC has been working with the policy makers, with local mayors, etc. We worked with London very effectively. I think it was Boris at the time, in terms of that impact into the community and working on that aspect of public health. But this is not, it has been, as I said, it's probably something that has down towards the mid-bottom part of our criteria when we've been speaking with cities. It's come too late in terms of the discussions. We would very much see this as coming very at the outset of our discussions with potential venues and cities in our next bids for 2021, 22, 23, etc. The capacity to be able to build the community into what cardiology means and what our event means. And yes, the event itself only lasts 4 days, but we have a planning that lasts 2 to 3 years, and we have a potential to also leave a legacy, very strong legacy, working with different age groups, working with schools, working with sports clubs, working with different educators, with research, universities, etc. But not all cities are equipped to do that. So I do think it would be a criteria that will definitely drive business, but will be a key part of us being successful in our events moving forward. So it's very interesting to have these discussions, and I think it definitely will accelerate those discussions impact. Examples of what we've done in the past, we've done something quite strong with that we started in London in terms of we worked on heart healthy cities and the effect of pollution on the heart. So that was working with local universities in terms of scientific evidence of pollution in cities and the effect that it has, the obviously detrimental effects that it has on the heart, and what we can do in making commitments in and around with the mayors of local cities and policymakers on improving obviously health in the air and health in cities. We've also worked in terms of public with the public in creating a public event, so fun walks, fun runs, etc., providing material to the public and providing aspects for diagnostics and testing. But as I said, it probably has been too ad hoc and it needs to be ramped up, and it will be a key point of making sure that we are powerful and we drive the purpose of events continue to be face-to-face in the future.
Mm-hmm. And Sven, can I come to you then? Because, sorry, you want to say something anyway? Go ahead.
Yeah, it just, I think what Robbie just mentioned is the impact for the local economy. What I'm doing since I started actually with the Floriade in Venlo, and here for this Floriade 2018, initiating a global dialogue around the themes and the Floriade, and this is a dialogue with the local economy, with the enterprises around horticulture sector, with knowledge institutes and politics, and to create a kind of more stimulate a spin-off, because it's never guaranteed. And as you mentioned in Reggie's, climate challenges, stimulating this kind of economy. And we are in the Netherlands a quite small country, but well positioned in horticulture sector in the world, and it works. And knowledge exchange is something we start in collaborating. And when you have a conference like this, usually you intend to collaborate. Does the work still work? Do we have still a connection?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it was frozen. And just that's what for me it's the most important aspect in stimulating this kind of collaboration and an dialogue program, which provides opportunities to the enterprises in the region to get in touch with our international community. We bring here, in this case, to Almere. This is for me finally the legacy. I when I leave and going back home to Germany, it's for long-term relationship you stimulate, and a dialogue program is always for me a perfect instrument. And right, it can go in parallel with the conference. Sorry.
That's okay, Sven. So that's actually what I wanted to come to you and ask about. Really, is how do you? I mean, I think we can all think of. I don't want to name any names. But we can all think of events that have happened in the past where it feels like quite a, shall we say, not a symbiotic relationship between the event and the event's host. You know, the event just kind of turns up, does what it needs to do, and leaves. How do you ensure that your event is? How do you ensure that you're working with the event host? To make sure that they're getting the maximum they can out of the event as well as you taking away what you need from the host.
Yeah, coming back to the objectives, it's not just creating for us a visitor event, a horticulture show. That's what we have every year in, let's say, in the Keukenhof in Holland. But we have different objectives, and I call it. Normally, we have two types of Floriades. So one is a visitor event with the 2 million visitors. And the other one is, I call it, let's say, it's on the B2B and knowledge exchange level. Because about 10-15% are representatives of media, diplomats, the protocol is going along with it, knowledge exchange program. The dialogue program, for example, is not part of our exhibition. It's part of our collaboration with our international community in combination with our local companies. And so this is, for me, a perfect moment, and because the host city and the host country, the Netherlands, if you see, why are we hosting a World Expo, a Horticulture Expo, the smallest format? It's about the friendship with the other participating countries. And how do you activate this? It's in getting in touch, collaborating, and changing knowledge and experience, in this case, in the horticulture sector. And this is the same as the main objective from the host city, is besides the urban development and taking this moment for the Floriade, is it in stimulating these activities. The same objectives, economy, how can develop the economy? If you see it here for us in Almere, we want to further develop economy. It's not just locally, it's not just in the Netherlands, it's with the international community. So, and these instruments are very important for us in parallel with the, let's say, visitor event.
Okay, thank you. I've noticed that we don't actually have too long left, and I really wanted to come to something that I think all of you have mentioned in some capacity so far, which is legacy. It's a word that I think probably is mentioned more than any other at the host cities that I've been to. All events have this focus now, particularly post Agenda 2020 with the Olympics, and as we've moved forward into an era when, as I said, events don't feel like they can just drop into, use the facilities and leave. They have to leave behind. They have to leave a positive impact that they can then use to advertise their event to future hosts. But it feels as though that idea of legacy has been kind of stuck for a little while. It's been about developing infrastructure, measuring the economic impact, as Robbie said, which is kind of this very kind of base idea of what legacy is. So does it need to go beyond that? Does it need to now start going beyond just looking at infrastructure and urban development and into something deeper? Jakob, I'll come to you first and how World Athletics has approached this.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's been pretty well documented that it needs to take next step in all of this. In our perspective, this is about very early on when we're working with the city to have a discussion on city policies, city strategy, and also figuring out what is the zeitgeist of the city. I think zeitgeist is something we tend to forget, possibly also including demography as well, and then figuring out this massive investment, and it is a massive investment very often in sporting events. How do we ensure that the city and being me in my position, also the sport, is in a better position the day after the event than we were the day before? Now, obviously, it has very often been measured economic impact because that is to a certain extent measurable, and also the same goes for facilities, etc. But we're definitely more aware now of building human capital, social capital, sporting capital, to basically say that this is an event is not the conclusion. In many ways, it should be seen as the starting point of the next step. So it's basically preparation to take the next step in city policy, city strategies, and making sure that it's framed within the city's zeitgeist, I would say.
So Robbie, I'll come to you there then, because obviously from the city and the country perspective, how do you encourage rights holders to tell you about what the legacy is going to be, rather than just them saying we're going to deliver X amount of economic impact? What else is it that you're looking for in bids from rights holders?
It's very simple. It's trust, it's partnership, it's collaboration, it's co-creation, and it's making sure. And I agree 100% with Jakob. It's about the host city, region, or country working with the rights holder, but it goes beyond just working together. I think one of the challenges for a rights holder, and given that they are the rights holder, they're the owner of the event, they want to protect, and they have an innate need to protect. And what it is that their event is about, the raison d'etre, the why. And I think one of our challenges and one of sometimes our frustrations as a country or as a city is that rights holder coming to us and being able to let go a little bit. We're events professionals as well, and we want, as Jakob said, we want that event to leave us. If that's an event hosted in Edinburgh or Glasgow or anywhere else in Scotland, we want that event to leave us in a better shape than it was before, which is exactly what the rights holder wants. However, for that to happen successfully, it needs that rights holder to let go a little bit, to understand and let us leave a bit of our DNA and include a bit of our DNA in the development of the plans for that event. What works best? How? And often a rights holder will come and say, okay, you've secured the right to host this event. Here are the plans. This is what we did last time in such and such a city. So this is what we want you to deliver this time, without them actually thinking through, okay, what does that mean for the location of the region that they want to host that event in Scotland? And it's my colleague Paul Bush mentioned this yesterday, and the relationship that we've developed over the course of the last couple of years working with the UCI on the new Cycling World Championships in 2023. So it's been extremely helpful that this is a brand new event that combines a number of UCI individual world championships, but it's meant that we have been able to co-create and collaborate with the UCI, but built on an absolute partnership of trust. That we both parties want to ensure that this event is a massive success. But we know what it means and where we can host and best host certain aspects in Scotland. We know about the host country and the host region, and the UCI know about cycling events. So it's bringing that knowledge and expertise together. And I go back to my initial point. It's about trust and collaboration. If you don't have that trust and real true trust and partnership, then it will be a transactional relationship. It won't be a transformational one.
Thank you. Yeah, in my experience, the UCI are actually pretty good at doing that and recognizing where expertise lies. Sven, if I could just come to you very quickly, is that something that the Floriade is good at letting go and allowing your host cities to have their own input into the event and influence the structure of it and the way it's organized in order to secure their own legacy?
What we have to do is we have to organize it together with the city, with the province, and so because the impact and the opportunities is that is what our experience is. How do we bring the international community to it? And we do it as host service for our host city, for the city of Almere. And we introduce them into this kind of event. So they will be later integral part of the event itself. That's the way how we do it. And then finally, when they are part of the event, they understand how it works. It's very complicated. Everybody wants a World Expo, but nobody knows what a World Expo is. First, it's the same for me. When I did my first World Expo in Hanover 2000, then at the end you understand what you are doing. And I think it's for you the same when you did your first event. Then later you understood, okay, that's how about it and how can we improve it? It's always the same.
Thanks, Sven. Okay, we've got a minute left. Aoife, I'll come to you for some closing thoughts on that. I mean, we touched on the legacy of your own event earlier, but do you have a similar problem with trying to communicate the purpose of the event and then ensuring that the host city gets some legacy benefit out of that as well?
You know, I think it's really exciting to hear Robbie speaking in terms of that aspect of co-creation and not playing lip service to this word legacy, but having a meaningful conversation. You mentioned that, Robbie, as well earlier on. You know, it's coming to at the very early stages in the RFP stages, etc., and bringing this up as a topic. The cities clearly know the fabric of a country and a city, so it's allowing them to have that discussion and to take a lead on that discussion. I know with the ESC we have been frustrated by cities that haven't, but that's probably been even a misalignment of expectations. So I think that this needs to be kind of one of the priorities, and I'm very excited by anything that's in around co-creation and partnership. I think the world of copy and paste is definitely over, so there's a real opportunity here to be able to build on novel areas, and I think this is where certain cities and the lead and create a real advantage for themselves. So.
Perfect. All right. I think our time is officially up. I didn't see any questions in the chat box, so I'm sorry if anyone asked one and I didn't get to put it to the group. But thank you to Aoife, Jakob, Robbie, and Sven for that. It was really good. Hopefully, in a year's time, we'll be back in Glasgow and doing this all over again, maybe in a slightly different format. But thank you to the panel and to everyone who watched. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good